Uh, I wrote my speech in French, but I'll live translate for everyone, so excuse me for any peculiar words. So my talk will be about growing your community from start to not finish, hopefully. Who am I? And why am I here? I work at PrestaShop, which is a French e-commerce company. We release a CMS for creating your online shop. I'm a documentation manager, and for the past year I've been also open source advocate, meaning that I try to push the community to understand that it's the benefit to contribute and in every step of the way. I've been very active in the WordPress community for the past 10 years or so as many kind of translators, founder and organizer of events. And I've also been a member of the Paris Web team for 6 years, and that's my credentials. What is an open source community? I think many of you know, because, well, a show of hands, who here runs an open source community? And who is a part of an open source community? I thought there were more. Well, let's see what we can learn from each other. A community, I tried to write a definition of what makes a community. You can read it in French, I can translate it in English. A community is a community for an open source project comprises all the people, the trusted people, it's important, who proactively work and together and in full transparency toward the improvements and the promotion of the project in all its aspects, whether they are paid or not. That's your community, just about anyone who wants to be involved or who is involved. That's not only developers, that's also designers, translators, users, that's those who are on the forums, those also who create local events, and those who are maybe forgotten, the ones who resell your open source project to other people. They too are promoting the project in a way, so they are also to be included in the community. They all contribute in their respective level. And no. How do we create that open source community? The community is, first you have to understand that the open source projects start from the moment an open source license is applied to it. Because as many of you must know, the open source license is what separates the private projects from the public projects in a way, because they offer 4 freedoms. The freedom to execute the project, the freedom to study and adapt it, the freedom to redistribute it, and the freedom to improve it and to distribute your improvements. This cannot be done in non-open projects in a way. And you have to understand that the open source projects start with the distribution of the project. Those are the open source license is mainly a license of distributions. If you do not distribute the project, if you keep it to yourself or to your clients one by one, it does not have to rely on an open source project. The distributions mean that you can make use of the Linus law, which says given enough eyeballs, all bugs are shallow. The idea behind that is that the project can only be improved by opening the code to adjust it by everyone, because if there is a bug, someone eventually will find it, given enough eyeballs, again. But how do you know you have an open source project with a proper license? How do you create that license? It's kind of a spontaneous creation, because you have it online, you put the project on various hosts and the various websites, but you need to host the community yourself first, through first hosting the code on GitHub or other projects. Have a bug tracker. This is your main communication, at first, your main communication point with your community. Having a forum, having a mailing list, because not everyone will be developer or will be modifying the code. Some will just be users who want to exchange with each other. So you have to foster that with a proper tool, online tool. You have the documentation and the wiki. You cannot start a project without having at least a few pages of documentation. If not, your potential users will be lost and you will spend your time writing more questions into the FAQ. And you have also, if your project is multinational, you have a collaborative translation. You have many websites where you can have that. But at first, the community is formed with developers and so-called power users, meaning those who are fearless enough to download your new project and try it for themselves and give you feedback. Feedback being someone who can actually write a proper bug report. And those are power users. Why do you need a community? The community is almost intarissable, as an unending source of volunteers. Whether you need ideas, bug fixes, help between your community members, and promoting your projects and translating it, you cannot do that by yourself. You have, at one time or the other, to rely on someone else and to trust someone else to do it for you, for the benefit of the whole community. You cannot be everywhere. You have to delegate, and that's where your community begins. It's a virtuous circle because from the moment that people get interested in your project, it starts to be, how do you say, popular. The more it's popular, the more people use it, and the more they get feedback, and the more you will improve the software for everyone. It's really a win-win situation. Hosting and fostering that community just can only help your project grow. And in a purely business sense of the way of the project, well, you might not be able to pay for dozens of developers to improve the project. I'm not saying that putting a for-pay product on open source will magically bring 20 more developers to your crew, but just having more real users having a look at your code will bring you much more happiness for the benefit of everyone again. So how do you foster that community? How do you make it grow from those first moments when you host the community, and how do you take it to the summit? I think there are 5 main tools to grow the community. The first one is to communicate. Communication is key. You have to be not transparent, you have to be honest. You need to have a roadmap, you need to have public discussions, you need to be present on the forum, you need to be proactive on the bug tracker, to answer people, to say no quickly, to say yes quickly. You have to communicate your intentions. Otherwise, if you are mute, well, people just will be in front of a wall and they won't stay for your community, they will go someplace else. There is a risk, if you are not open enough, there is a risk of doing what some call the open source, which is basically someone who releases code, puts a license, and then be done with it. They still have their developers. They accept changes here and there, but mostly it's paid developers who do it. It's not really the kind of open source you want to be associated with. Meritocracy. It's not the best way to do. Meritocracy says that the ones who lead are the ones who deserve it. It's not the best word to describe what I want to express here. I prefer the do-ocracy kind of thing. So take it with a grain of salt. The point is, there are always questions of who should do that, who should take these decisions. The do-ocracy way of doing things says that it's the ones who do that do. It's really just that simple. If someone wants something done, well, just do it, and someone, even if it's not the best way to do it, someone will improve upon it, someone will iterate on it. But you will always have within a project some kind of role ladder, if you will, where you have the project managers, and to the bottom of sort, there are the regular users. And you must say that everyone can climb that ladder, if they are professional, if they have a good personality, if they can work well as a team. You really need to explain to the whole community, to show them that this member has proven himself worthy. I don't like that, but has shown that he cares for the project and he cares for the community. So we want to include it more in the decision process, and these two should be shown. These two, because this will push others to start contributing more because they want to be bigger part in your project. Interaction. There comes a time in a project where just being there isn't enough. You have to be also with the other communities. You have to visit the others. You have to find ideas somewhere else. You have to leave your ivory tower. There is not just your community. There are others who are doing the same thing as you do, and you can benefit from the others and work together, either through common projects or through common events. You always can gain from socializing. People, projects too can be friends. This is important. Technology. There is a kind of open source Darwinism. You have to adapt, or then you are forgotten. Many projects have the risk of staying on an obsolete technology, keeping on an obsolete framework, or choosing obsolete methods. And as a developer, as a designer, as a translator, you are okay with starting with simple things, but then you see other projects improving themselves and changing their styles and doing big decisions. And you don't want to be stuck in the methods of the past and the frameworks of the past. So as a developer, as a contributor, there is an incentive to improve yourself and not stay in projects that do not move forward. So it's a risk for many projects to move forward, but it's a worthy risk because you will then upgrade your community with it, and everyone will get better together. If you do not do that, you risk losing your contributors. Worse, you risk not having new contributors and becoming a diluted project with no fans. And then the fun. A contribution does not mean a contributor. Most of the time, contributors come, submit a pull request or give an opinion, and then they leave. How do you make them come again? How do you make so that they want to continue contribute and not just this one sentence they changed? Well, you have to be proactive. You have to show them you care. You have to be the first to answer to the question or to the pull request. You have to put comment. You have to be quick on your code reviews, and once it's merged, you have to thank the guy, and you have to show that this guy this girl contributed something important to the project. That's being proactive and not having pull requests stay silent for several months at a time is really important, because this is how you see if a project is alive or not. Create human link. Being human is part of our DNA. but really, it's also part of a project DNA. You really need to de-anonymize your conversation. You need to be present. You need to have your own picture, maybe your real name. You need to show that they are not, again, talking to a wall or just a corporation. You have to be there as a person, and you have to take a human voice and not just, thank you for your pull request, cheers. You have to vary, you have to change of tone, be friendly. This is webcasts and video too are helpful because they put a face on the decision process. You have to, again, with the role ladder, you have to accompany contributors on that ladder. You have to show them that they can have more weight on the project. They can be part of the decision openly. So they know there is a way, and you are expressively taking them by the hand and showing them the way to the top to become more of a contributor, more of someone who takes decisions with you rather than as a consequence of your presence. You have to show them that they do count. You have to show them that their pull request is important, just as the other pull request is important. Because again, if you just let a pull request or a suggestion or a comment or a bug report be forgotten, well, they will leave, simply put. You have to grow also with the community, because you will start with one developer or creator or one people writing documentation, code, and support. And maybe you will have a team at first, but you will not be able to do that if you become really popular. And that's why including contributors outside of the initial project, outside of the paid contributor maybe, is very, very important, because you can rely on them for minor versions, for translation, for support, for events, for a lot of things. You must grow, you must include your community one way or another, and show them that they are part of your team and they are not working for you. You are together in this project. And I'm gonna try to, those were really vague and general steps in growing a community. I'm gonna try to give you a few steps to actively, precisely do something that can change the way your project is perceived. It's really about visibility and accessibility. There are a few steps you can easily do to make so that someone wants to contribute, it will be easier for them to contribute, and they will want to come back and contribute with you. First, documentation. You just cannot only have an FAQ, you have to be the first to write the documentation, and even if it's a few pages, even if it's a few paragraphs, this helps because someone else will understand more, will be able to rewrite it for you. The simplest FLOSS projects, well, free, libre, open source projects, really needs the documentation. And this starts with description and the famous README files that's been popular since GitHub. Many GitHub hosted projects just have a quick line with it's easy, just sudo npm glop bower and .j, and you're done. Okay, this is a barrier for many people. You must accompany them towards understanding how it works, how they can contribute. You have to have proper contribution guidelines, explanations of that. A code of conduct, second point, is also really important because it shows, as you said, inclusiveness. You are willing to act upon trolls, upon sexist comments, upon racist comments, because someone who does not abide to your code of conduct cannot be part of a healthy community. So you have, I named two projects in that aspect. The ADA initiative, which has an excellent code of conduct, which is reused by many general projects. And you have the contributor covenant, which is another more open source specific kind of code of conduct, or you just can inspire yourself of those and write your own. But it's important to have a kind of code of conduct so that people who, from minorities, women, Asian people, anyone, feel that it's not about the white male. It's about just being part of a community, and they too are welcome. Having less obstacles. There are projects just such as Your First PR and Up for Grabs, who they try to promote easy pull request, easy first pull request, meaning that you are creating a set of pull requests where you describe all the steps towards having the pull request merge, meaning that you write really from top to bottom what needs to be done, where it needs to be done, etc., etc. And those are helpful for those contributors who've never contributed before. This could be their first pull request ever. It could be for your project, if you are willing to spend some time writing really the guide to this pull request. And you have your first PR and up for grabs are community websites which gather all these pull requests and where you beginners can start easily. You should have norms, meaning that you should have code norms which are followed, but they should not be too strict, because if you keep telling your contributors, well, I like your pull request, but your commit name is in the wrong norm, and then you did not use PSR2, so really I can't merge it. Could you rebase your work and maybe squash your commits and stuff like that? This is Chinese for most first-time contributors. This is really hard. Most of the time, thanks to or because of GitHub, most of the time they just edit the file online and they don't know what is rebasing, what is squashing, what is a merge. They just want to contribute. If your norms are severe, if you are very strict on applying commit names with the exact format, then you should cherry pick it yourself and thank them in the cherry pick. We can discuss that later on.
Sometimes it's very good to be very, very strict when the field is very wide and people tend to talk about everything around and not on the topic.
This is for first-timers, and this is obviously general advices. But yeah, there are steps here and there which can be taken. The idea is to ease the way in for beginners. You have to be reactive in the community at every step of the project, being blog comments, being on Twitter, you have to be present on the forums, you have to be present everywhere, and this is why you should grow with your community. This is why you should include community members within your community, because they too will be able, we have the knowledge and the right to answer in the name of the project, whereas you cannot be everywhere at the same time. And finally, in the human part of it, you need to promote your project in a way that is human through just meeting people, having informal drinks, and then building up towards maybe a more formal meetup, and then maybe towards a bar camp. And in the end, after a few months, a few years, you'll have a true conference. And that's how we started with WordPress Francophone. We started 5 people around a table and a few glasses of just about anything. And now we are running WordCamp Europe next year with 3,000 people. And all this in 8 years, but it was really worth it. And one final piece of advice, you do not have to do all this at the same time. You do not have to do this on the first day. You do not have to be perfect to make it. You just need to care, because this is how you will show your community that you are here for the project, for them, and they will be here for you. Thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Questions? Don't be shy. Wait.
Français ou anglais, hein? Anglais? Yeah.
Well, English. Okay, thank you. I know a lot of open source projects that are in fact open source projects, not because they don't want to do it, but because they don't have the time or the money to do it, because it costs money and time to run an open source community. What is your advice for these people to solve this problem?
Actually, it's also it's long been a problem for PrestaShop themselves, and that's part of why I've been asked to change my role into an open source advocate, is because I wanted people to understand that we want the community to understand that we want them to contribute. It's really a ping pong kind of thing. There is the main way to not be a open source is to publish your intent. That means having a roadmap, having a blog explaining all the various points you want to make in the coming weeks, months, years, and including the fans, the ones who already contribute in a good way. You don't have to be afraid of them. You can always change what is how would you say that? You can always update their suggestion into something that works good for your project. But really the idea is first to communicate in a honest and clear way. And that, I think, including contributors in the decision process is an important part of leaving the open source stage. And you have, again, to grow with them, because there are days when you're going to have to take a retreat to take decisions, and you will still have to have people write blog posts and be present on the forum, and those guys and girls will be the ones from the community that you have trusted because they've shown they can be trusted with that. It's one way to do it.
Other questions? 3, 2, 1. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. No. Always one person.
Hello. I would like to know how to make it more reliable in terms of like when you have a commitment to do to make sure the roadmap should be like on the map, and what are the issues that we should consider to make it more reliable?
To make the roadmap more reliable?
Yes, because we have no idea about like other members in the community who will be like available. Maybe there are some time or budget issue in the middle of the project or at the end of the project, and at certain level we need to make sure we need to maintain the level of the code, level of the product and quality.
Yeah, well, the roadmap doesn't have to be a precise set of steps. You could have just a broad roadmap giving your intent. The important part of it is that the contributors want to contribute on something they can be sure will be of use to the project. So you don't have to say, well, we're gonna have this option, and then maybe a whole lot of things. No, you can have precise ideas for the coming week, but you can have also broader ideas for your project, and just putting that online in a maybe someday or good to have kind of roadmap, you know. Well, you will give direction to your contributors, telling them, well, this is your next global step in the project, and they will know that if they contribute in that area of the project, then there is a better chance that it will be taken into account rather than that other area, which, well, it is not going to be reworked in the coming year. You see, you don't have to be precise. You don't have to have a roadmap that shows that bug 182 will be included in the next release. Anyone else? I think we're good. Thank you very much.